Welcome back to the English Nest. Today we are going to learn 3 very important and commonly confused words in English nearly almost and virtually. These words are extremely common in spoken English, written English, academic discussions, news reports, movies, interviews, and professional communication. Many English learners understand these words individually but still feel confused about when to use each one correctly. Sometimes learners use nearly where almost sounds more natural. Sometimes they use virtually in situations where it sounds too formal or too strong. That is why understanding the real difference between these 3 words is very important if you want your English to sound natural, fluent, intelligent, and professional. These 3 words may look similar because all of them express the idea of closeness or incompleteness. However, the style, tone, strength, and practical meaning of each word are different. Native speakers choose between these words carefully depending on the situation, emotion level, formality, and intended meaning. By the end of this lecture you will clearly understand the meanings, differences, tones, sentence structures, and practical usage of nearly, almost, and virtually. You will also learn common mistakes, real-life examples, comparison sentences, and advanced speaking tips that will help you use these words confidently in daily conversation and professional English. So let us begin with the first word, nearly. The word nearly is an adverb. It means very close to something but not completely. It describes situations where something was almost achieved, almost reached, almost completed, or almost happened, but there is still a small remaining difference. The idea behind nearly is closeness without full completion. For example, if someone says, "I nearly finished my homework," it means the homework is not completely finished but most of it is done. There is only a small amount remaining. Nearly is commonly used with numbers, percentages, measurements, distances, time, quantities, and achievements. It often appears in formal writing, reports, articles, and educational English because it sounds slightly more structured and precise. Let us understand this through simple situations. If a teacher says nearly all students passed the exam, it means most students passed but not every single student. If someone says it is nearly midnight, it means the time is very close to midnight but it is not exactly midnight yet. If a football player says, "We nearly won the match," it means the team came very close to victory but did not actually win. Now let us talk about the tone of nearly. Nearly sounds neutral, clear, and slightly formal. It is common in everyday English, but it is especially useful in situations where precision matters. News reporters, teachers, writers, and professionals often prefer nearly because it sounds accurate and controlled. For example, a news report might say nearly 500 people attended the conference. A scientist might say the experiment was nearly successful. A business report might say sales increased by nearly 20%. In all these examples, nearly creates a sense of factual closeness. Now let us explore 5 detailed examples of nearly. First example. "I nearly missed the bus this morning because I woke up late." This means the speaker came extremely close to missing the bus but managed to catch it in time. Second example. "She nearly cried after hearing the emotional story." This means she became very emotional and was close to crying but controlled herself. Third example. "The building is nearly complete and will open next month." This means construction is almost finished but a small amount of work is still left. Fourth example. "We have been waiting for nearly 2 hours." This means the waiting time is close to 2 hours but not exactly 2 hours. Fifth example. "He nearly slipped on the wet floor." This means he almost fell but managed to stay balanced. Now let us move deeper into how nearly is used naturally in English. Nearly is very common with numbers and measurements. For example, nearly 1,000 people watched the live show. The bag weighs nearly 10 kilograms. The road is nearly 5 miles long. The company earned nearly $1 million. In all these cases, nearly introduces approximation. The number is close to the stated amount but not exact. Nearly is also often used before adjectives and participles. For example, "The room is nearly empty." "The work is nearly finished." "The road is nearly blocked." "The child is nearly asleep." Here nearly modifies the condition or state of something. Now let us discuss a very important point. Nearly is less common before negative words. Native speakers usually prefer almost in such situations. For example, people naturally say, I almost never watch television, instead of, I nearly never watch television. Although nearly never is grammatically possible, almost never sounds much more natural. This is an important difference that advanced English learners should remember. Now let us move to the second word, almost. Almost is also an adverb and its meaning is very similar to nearly. It means very close to happening, becoming, or being true but not completely. However, almost is more flexible, more conversational, and more emotional than nearly. It is one of the most frequently used words in spoken English. Almost can describe actions, emotions, situations, opinions, beliefs, possibilities, and experiences. It fits naturally into casual speech, daily conversations, storytelling, and emotional communication. For example, when someone says, I almost forgot your birthday, the speaker means forgetting was very close to happening, but they remembered at the last moment. The emotional feeling is stronger and more personal than nearly. Now let us understand the tone of almost. Almost sounds warm, natural, conversational, and human. It is the word people use most in real-life speaking situations. Friends, family members, teachers, YouTubers, actors, and native speakers use almost constantly in conversation because it flows naturally. Now let us study 5 detailed examples of almost. First example. I almost dropped my phone while running. This means the phone nearly fell, but the speaker managed to hold it. Second example. She almost screamed when she saw the snake. This means she became so frightened that screaming was very close to happening. Third example. We almost arrived on time but traffic delayed us. This means they were very close to being punctual but did not succeed. Fourth example. I almost cannot believe what happened today. This means the situation feels shocking, unbelievable, or surprising. Fifth example. The food is almost ready, so please wait a few more minutes. This means the cooking process is nearly complete. Now let us understand where almost is especially powerful. Almost works beautifully with emotions and reactions. For example, I almost cried. I almost laughed. I almost panicked. I almost screamed. I almost gave up. These expressions sound emotional, natural, and conversational. Nearly can sometimes work in these examples, but almost sounds much more fluent and native. Now let us discuss another important usage. Almost is extremely common with negative expressions. For example, I almost never eat fast food. She almost never complains. They almost never arrive late. These are very natural English expressions. Almost is also used to soften opinions. For example, it almost feels impossible. The movie was almost perfect. His explanation was almost convincing. In these sentences, almost adds subtlety and nuance. Now let us compare nearly and almost directly. Both nearly and almost mean very close but not complete. In many situations, they can replace each other without changing the meaning. For example, I nearly fell. I almost fell. Both are correct. She nearly finished the project. She almost finished the project. Again, both are correct. However, there is still a small difference in feeling. Nearly sounds slightly more formal, structured, and factual. Almost sounds more emotional, natural, and conversational. Listen carefully to these examples. Nearly 200 students attended the lecture. This sounds like a report or formal statement. Almost everyone enjoyed the party. This sounds natural and conversational. Now let us discuss situations where almost sounds better than nearly. We naturally say, almost impossible, almost certain, almost always, almost never, almost everybody. These expressions are extremely common in spoken English. On the other hand, nearly sounds more natural with measurements and quantities. For example, nearly 50 kilometers, nearly 3 hours, nearly complete, nearly half. This is not a strict grammar rule but a natural language pattern. Now let us move to the third word, virtually. Virtually is more advanced, more formal, and more powerful than nearly and almost. The word virtually means almost completely or practically speaking. It describes situations where something is so close to being true, complete, or real that for practical purposes we can consider it true or complete. This is the key idea behind virtually. Practical reality. When we use virtually, we are saying the difference is so small that it hardly matters anymore. For example, if someone says the stadium was virtually empty, it means there were technically a few people there but so few that it felt empty. If a company says the system is virtually error-free, it means there may still be tiny errors, but they are so rare that the system can practically be considered perfect. Now let us understand the tone of virtually. Virtually sounds formal, professional, analytical, and strong. It is commonly used in business English, academic writing, journalism, technical discussions, politics, and professional communication. News channels, business leaders, professors, and analysts often use virtually because it sounds authoritative and intelligent. Now let us study 5 detailed examples of virtually. First example. The town became virtually silent after midnight. This means there was almost no sound at all. Second example. The project is virtually complete and ready for launch. This means only tiny final details remain. Third example. She is virtually unbeatable in chess competitions. This means defeating her is extremely difficult. Fourth example. The company has virtually eliminated production mistakes. This means mistakes are now extremely rare. Fifth example. After the heavy snowfall, the roads were virtually unusable. This means using the roads became almost impossible in practical reality. Now let us understand the deeper difference between virtually and the other 2 words. Nearly and almost focus on closeness. Virtually focuses on practical reality. This difference is extremely important. For example, I nearly finished my assignment. This means the assignment is still incomplete. I almost finished my assignment. Again, incomplete. But if someone says, I virtually finished my assignment, this means the remaining work is so tiny that the assignment can practically be considered finished. Another example. The hall is almost full. There is still noticeable space left. The hall is virtually full. There is hardly any space left at all. Virtually creates a much stronger image. Now let us compare all 3 words together. Sentence 1. I almost won the race. This sounds natural, emotional, and conversational. Sentence 2. I nearly won the race. This sounds slightly more formal and factual. Sentence 3. I virtually won the race. This sounds unusual unless the speaker dominated the race so strongly that losing felt unrealistic or unfair. Now another comparison. The room is almost empty. This means there are very few people. The room is nearly empty. This gives a similar meaning but sounds more neutral. The room is virtually empty. This strongly emphasizes emptiness in a practical sense. Now let us explore how native speakers use these words in real life. In casual conversation, almost is the king. People say, I almost forgot. I almost called you. I almost fell asleep. I almost missed the train. Almost sounds smooth, friendly, and natural. In professional reports, nearly is common. For example, the company earned nearly $5 million. Nearly 80% of voters supported the policy. The construction is nearly complete. Nearly sounds precise and factual. In business and academic English, virtually becomes powerful. For example, the disease has been virtually eliminated. The market is virtually controlled by one company. The device is virtually indestructible. These sentences sound formal and authoritative. Now let us learn some advanced speaking tips. Tip 1. If you are speaking casually, use almost most of the time because it sounds natural. Tip 2. If you are discussing numbers, measurements, statistics, or time, use nearly for a more polished style. Tip 3. If you want to emphasize practical completion or near absolute truth, use virtually. Tip 4. Do not overuse virtually in casual conversation because it may sound too formal or dramatic. Tip 5. Remember that virtually often adds intensity and confidence. Now let us look at common learner mistakes. Mistake 1. Using virtually for emotional actions. For example, I virtually cried yesterday. This sounds unnatural. Native speakers say, I almost cried yesterday. Mistake 2. Using nearly with never. For example, I nearly never go outside. This sounds awkward. Correct natural English is, I almost never go outside. Mistake 3. Using virtually for ordinary unfinished tasks. For example, I virtually cleaned my room. This sounds strange unless the room is practically completely clean. Now let us practice with advanced comparison examples. Example 1. The work is almost done. Casual natural speech. The work is nearly done. Slightly more formal. The work is virtually done. Strong emphasis on practical completion. Example 2. She almost died laughing. Very emotional conversational English. She nearly died laughing. Possible but less natural. She virtually died laughing. Very unusual and dramatic. Example 3. The country is virtually independent. This means it is technically not fully independent but behaves as if it is. This is a strong political or professional usage. Now let us explore how tone changes meaning. Imagine your friend asks about your preparation for an exam. If you say, I almost finished studying, it sounds casual and personal. If you say, I nearly finished studying, it sounds slightly more organized. If you say, I virtually finished studying, it sounds like only tiny details remain. The emotional feeling changes with each word. Now let us understand these words through real-world categories. In news English, nearly is very common. Nearly 300 homes were damaged. Nearly half the population voted. In conversation English, almost is extremely common. I almost forgot your message. We almost got caught. In business English, virtually appears frequently. The company virtually dominates the market. The process is virtually automatic. In academic writing, both nearly and virtually are common depending on context. Nearly all participants agreed. The experiment virtually confirmed the theory. Now let us build stronger understanding with another set of examples. Nearly examples. The baby is nearly asleep. It is nearly lunchtime. We nearly lost our passports. The movie is nearly 3 hours long. He nearly broke the window. Almost examples. I almost believed his story. She almost fainted from shock. We almost gave up hope. The train almost crashed. I almost forgot to call my mother. Virtually examples. The beach was virtually deserted. The machine is virtually silent. He virtually runs the entire company. The agreement is virtually final. The internet connection is virtually uninterrupted. Now let us summarize everything clearly. Nearly means very close but not complete. It sounds slightly formal and is often used with numbers, time measurements, and factual information. Almost also means very close but not complete. It sounds natural, conversational, emotional, and flexible. It is the most common choice in spoken English. Virtually means almost completely or practically speaking. It emphasizes that the difference is so small it hardly matters. It sounds formal, strong, and professional. Remember these simple formulas. Almost equals natural conversation. Nearly equals precise closeness. Virtually equals practical completion. You can also think of them as levels. Almost is close. Nearly is very close. Virtually is so close that it practically feels complete. These small vocabulary differences may seem simple, but they create a huge difference in fluency, confidence, and professionalism. Native speakers notice these subtle choices, and using them correctly makes your English sound advanced, polished, and intelligent. The best way to master these words is through observation and practice. Listen carefully to movies, podcasts, interviews, YouTube videos, and conversations. Notice when native speakers use almost, nearly, and virtually. Try making your own sentences every day. For example, you can practice by saying, I almost forgot my homework. The work is nearly complete. The meeting is virtually over. The more you repeat and use these expressions, the more natural they will become in your speech. And always remember, language fluency is not only about grammar. It is also about choosing the right word with the right tone in the right situation. That is exactly what advanced English speakers do naturally. This brings us to the end of our detailed lecture on nearly, almost, and virtually. Keep practicing, keep observing, and keep improving your English every single day, because small vocabulary improvements create big communication results.